Good afternoon, Dr. Rima. Module 1, an operational definition is a very specific characteristics of what an action means in a social setting. So what that means is if we could see something, we could measure it, we could count it, we could rely on it. It's something that we see in a social setting. It's an action that's performed by somebody in a social setting. For example, it could be crying or smiling. Okay? And this will let us know how this person feels because we cannot see a feeling, right? We could only witness an expression, and an expression would be, like I said, someone who's crying or someone who's smiling. All right. The operational definition would be defined. We could define it as being happy. Now, what does that mean when someone's happy? How can they express that they're happy? And one way they could express that they're happy is they could say hello. They be positive, say hello to everyone, or they could smile, or they could whistle a soft tune or melody. So some people might be walking by, they're whistling, and this person, we could say that they're happy, that they feel joyful, or pleased. Okay. And by this standard observable action, everyone knows exactly what counts as being happy. So that means anyone that's looking at this person can say that this person is happy. Why? Because they're smiling, right? They're greeting everyone. They're whistling a soft tune or melody, and this we know and we can relate to as being happy. Okay, so basically, we're turning a concept or an idea into something that we can see, right? So being, happy is an idea, it's a concept, right? It's a feeling. We don't know, what does that look like? What does happy look like? We want to know how something looks. Okay? So now that we can see it, we could measure it, we could count it, and then we could repeat it. Okay, this makes research accurate and fair. All right. Okay. So, two social psychology concepts. One would be a behavioral indicator. Behavioral indicators are specific observable actions like smiling or crying, and we use them to signal, or we use this signal as to gauge how someone feels on the inside. Okay, so these are signals that we use to gauge how someone feels on the inside. Are they jumping up and down, ecstatic, very happy? And so we could gauge, how happy someone is by how they're acting, what they're showing us. Also, relatability. Because smiling equals happy and crying equals sad, that means we can get a constant measurement over different situations. What that means is if we're dealing, let's say, with a 5-year-old, a young 5-year-old, she's having a party, and the kids are happy. We could gauge how happy they are from the different balloons, different color balloons, different music that's played, also different games that they might play. And at the same time, we could be at the senior function, a senior retirement committee, where we could also gauge what makes them happy by exposing them to certain things. So a real life situation would just be that. If we had I'm just checking my time. If we had a party for kindergarten students, what would make them happy? How would we know that they're happy? So we would introduce certain things and read their response, we'd gauge their response. Are they smiling? Are they joyful? From the different colored balloons, like I said, from the different music that's played, from the games that are played. Okay, so that's that module 1. Moving on to module 2, I'm just checking my time. Module 2, the upward social comparison. Okay, basically what that means, that we're comparing ourselves to those who are better off. And again, This just means that someone, if someone, let's say, just wore an outfit that we wish we wore, or they're driving a car that we wish we had, and we're comparing ourselves to that. And what happens now, that leads to the social psychology concept. One would be self-evaluation maintenance. Okay, basically what that means is the theory explaining how someone deals with their self-esteem when in the inner circle, someone in the inner circle does it better than them. Basically what that means is, what we start to do is we start to be envious of this person, or we start to downplay what this person is doing to make our own selves feel better, right? So we can look at someone, they did it better than us, and it's a form of hating, right? We're hating on this person. We're saying, you know what? Yeah, what they did was, it was so. Meanwhile, it was great. What they did was excellent. We didn't do that, so now we feel envy. We feel what we call hate, and we look at that person and we downplay it. Oh, it wasn't all of that. It wasn't like a big deal. I could have done it better, but you didn't, right? Another thing is the relative deprivation. Relative deprivation, excuse me. Okay, this concept refers to a person feeling dissatisfaction or resentment that happens when comparing one's situation to another person's achievements. This person might feel some type of envy, again, like I said before, and might feel that they didn't fully measure up. Okay, so that's the relative deprivation. An example of that, and I had a personal example of that where I was at a restaurant and I wore a denim jacket, and this gentleman came in. He was with his date, and he wore a sport coat, and my date said, "Oh, that's a nice jacket." Right? And I felt in a way, I was like, oh, what do you mean? Like, I wore a denim jacket, but at the same time, he had on a sport coat. He was more put together than I was. And I just felt that, that relative depression where it's just like, I hated on him. I'm like, jacket ain't all of that, and such and so forth. And that was my real life experience with that. Okay, that's module 2. Moving on to module 3, again, checking my time. Was the jigsaw classroom. Okay, module 3, I went into the jigsaw classroom, and basically this is when people of different groups have a dislike towards each other due to prejudice and have a dislike to each other, but have to work together to perform a certain task or achieve a certain goal. The jigsaw classroom, the way it works is that the groups are divided into smaller groups. Each group has a certain task. Each group member with the same task work together and they become expert on that. Okay, and then the members of the small groups come back together and share what they can do best. And then they do the same thing when they meet up with the larger group. So the group as a whole are broken into smaller groups. In the smaller groups, everyone goes out and they do what they do best, right? So they become an expert at that. Now they get together, discuss what they all learned and what they all could do best. When they meet up with the larger group, that's when they go and achieve their task. Okay, in the social psychological concepts, one was the contact hypothesis, is that all groups connected are of equal status, have a common goal, and all groups have the full support of authorities. Okay? Another one was the subordinate goals. The subordinate goal is a task that can only be achieved when two or more groups put their racial and prejudice aside to work together for a common goal. Okay, so even though within the group, there's some racial animosity, there's some prejudice, right? And they have to put that aside to achieve the goal. If they don't put that aside and work together, the goal or task will not be achieved. Okay, thank you. I'm taking my time again. Thank you. I look forward to hearing your feedback. Great evening.